Heartwarming twist. Racist cop discovers elderly woman's son, a special ops hero, after shocking. The sun had barely risen over Millville when Officer Jack Collins caught a glimpse of the daily struggles woven through the town's fabric. He drove slowly, the cruiser's siren lights flickering like distant stars. In this little Midwestern town, where families worked hard for pennies, he felt the weight of generations resting heavily on his broad, weathered shoulders. He was respected, some would even say feared. Every corner of Main Street held memories, yet Jack felt a persistent itch of estrangement from ideals of justice that had once burned bright. As he rounded the block near Helen Davis's modest home, something nagged at him. A hawkish instinct tugged his gut when he noticed the young boy, only 12 at most, slipping something into his pocket from the corner store. It was the kind of small-town theft that had whispers spiraling in every diner and porch. Jack's mind raced with the stories of his family, moments steeped in misunderstanding and judgment. Torn between duty and ingrained bias, he felt his heart pounding against the chains of his own prejudices. And then, there stood Helen, her silver hair practically glowing beneath the morning sun. She was a widow, known for her compassion, her laughter echoing in the aisles of the local grocery. As she approached the boy, her voice soothing but filled with authority, Jack's internal conflict deepened. She leaned down, cradling the boy's trembling hands, whispering encouragement and understanding. "Helen," he called, ready to bring the harshness of the law upon the boy. "You can't protect him from what he did," but she shot him a look that held a world of unspoken history. "This boy needs empathy, not judgment, Jack," she replied, the weight in her voice piercing through him. Before he could respond, the boy fled, heart racing, only to be followed by murmurs of the townsfolk who had seen it all unfold. They exchanged glances, whispering accusations, their biases blending into a shade of anger that shadowed Helen's silent shoulders. It felt like a storm brewing, one Jack had seen many times before. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as tensions peaked, the atmosphere shifted. A car turned onto the street, its engine roaring like a distant thunder. Jack turned to watch as a tall figure stepped out, a handsome man with a proud stride. It was Daniel, Helen's estranged son, home from service, a decorated special ops hero. The air tingled with hope as Helen burst into tears, rushing to embrace him. In that fierce, desperate moment, Jack's heart cracked open like an old book, its pages flipping to reveal truths he'd buried deep. He stood frozen. There it was, the essence of love, of family, washing over the acrimony that had clouded his own judgments. The crowd quieted, watching his mother and son reunited, a picture of resilience. Jack felt the stir of voices around him, but the noise melted into a singular thought. Could he rise above his own turmoil and the hidden biases that had forged his reality? As he opened his mouth to defend the connection blossoming between Helen and Daniel, a flashback pierced through a moment from his own family that felt like a splash of icy water. Would he allow history to repeat itself? Today was not just about this town, it was about him. What would Jack Collins choose as the definition of justice? Would he hold on to prejudice or embrace the healing that communal understanding promised? The moment of reckoning loomed larger than ever. Jack felt the weight of the crowd's gaze upon him, their eyes searching for answers, for direction. He passed them, his heart drumming a chaotic rhythm, drawn to the reunion unfolding before him. Helen's tears sparkled like diamonds in the morning light, reflecting a lifetime of sacrifice and love. Daniel held her tightly, an anchor amidst the thrumming chaos of Millville's unyielding gossip. The boy who had taken from the store lingered in Jack's mind, his small face reflecting a lifetime of hardship. He understood that the true battle was not just against the shadows of his own making but against a community steeped in judgment. This boy, this leaf caught in the swirling wind of small-town bias, deserved better. Suddenly Daniel caught Jack's eye. The ache of recognition stared back at him. Daniel was more than a soldier. He was a bridge and opportunity. An opportunity for change. With his heart racing, Jack stepped forward, each stride defying the notion of rigid authority. "Helen," Jack called out, voice cracking but firm, "can I speak to you for a moment? In private?" She hesitated, her eyes darting from Daniel to Jack, confusion swirling within her. But there was a flicker of understanding. She nodded, leading Jack farther down the street, where they stood on the cusp of both public judgment and an intimate conversation. "Jack, what is wrong?" Helen asked, her brows knitted together with worry. "I saw what happened with the boy at the store. I can't shake it off. He's just a kid. I've been thinking about my own life, my own mistakes," Jack admitted, voice heavy. "We can't keep letting fear dictate our actions. We need to show that boy a different side of our community." Helen's gaze softened, her daunting experience wrapping around her words. "I see it too, Jack. But it's going to take more than understanding. It's going to take courage and change from all of us." He nodded, feeling the walls of self-doubt slowly crumble. He pulled a deep breath, sensing the potential swirling like the breeze around them. What if we could create a space where the community can come together? A mentorship program, or a community outreach? We could bridge the gap. Helen's eyes sparked with a flicker of hope. "You mean work together? An officer and a community to heal? It would send quite a message." "Exactly." He stepped closer, emboldened. "If I could understand you and Daniel, maybe we can help others see. Maybe we can break this cycle." As they spoke, Daniel and the crowd hovered in the background, eager to witness the unfolding drama. The air hummed with anticipation, reverberating with unvoiced hopes, fears, and long-held beliefs. Helen placed a gentle hand on Jack's shoulder. "It has to start with one moment, one brave decision. Do you believe we can make this happen?" As the weight of her question settled in the air between them, Jack glanced over at Daniel. The pride evident in the young soldier's stance fueled his determination. The memories of his past and the longings for a better future collided, and Jack felt a newfound warmth settle in his chest, igniting a spark of transformation. "Yes, I do," he breathed, voice steady. "But we need to act now." Just then, the young boy from earlier emerged from the edge of the crowd, his eyes wide with trepidation. He had been watching, listening, gauging the direction the community seemed ready to take. Hope rolled in like the summer breeze as Jack met his gaze, but as the boy opened his mouth to speak, a flash of sirens wailed in the distance, pulling Jack's attention back into the fray. Whispers rose again, fingers pointed, old attitudes threatened to return where compassion had just begun to bloom. What would this moment mean when the past had a way of creeping back into view? Would Jack find the courage to combat his fears, or would the shadows continue to loom, eclipsing the hope they had just kindled? As the sirens blared closer, tinged with an ominous promise, Jack's heart raced. The fight for a better Millville was just beginning, and with it, profound choices lay ahead. Jack stood frozen, the sound of sirens slicing through the fragile thread of hope that had begun to weave its way through the crowd. He could feel the tension in the air thickening, wrapping around him like a heavy fog. The boy's gentle eyes bore into his, an echo of uncertainty dancing in the air between them. "Stay here," he muttered to Helen, urgency lacing his voice. He felt the need to protect this boy from the noise approaching, to shield him from the weight of misunderstandings that had plagued so many. As he stepped away, the crowd parted as if sensing the storm brewing. The sirens grew louder, the flashing lights casting erratic shadows across the pavement. It was as if the very essence of what they were trying to build, a community united, was about to unravel before their eyes. "What's happening?" Helen called out, but Jack was already moving, his feet pounding against the ground toward the origin of the noise. A patrol car screeched to a halt, creating a cacophony of shouts that sent ripples of apprehension through the spectators. Jack recognized the officer stepping out, Officer Harris, a man known for his rigid adherence to the law, his countenance typical of a man who saw rules as black and white without considering the shades of gray. "What is the situation, officer?" Jack asked, voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of tension. Harris's face was a mask of intensity. "We got a report about a kid stealing. Suspect is down this way." "Wait!" Jack protested, the words spilling from his lips before he could catch himself. "That kid? You can't," but Harris was already barking orders. "I don't want to hear it, Jack. You're not on duty. Step back." The crowd had started to murmur, and Jack could see the boy's small frame shrinking, fear coiling around him like a creeping vine. Jack's mind raced. He envisioned the boy being further demonized, the old narrative of judgment and punishment replaying again. Suddenly, Daniel stepped forward from the crowd, moving with a calm determination. "Officer Harris," he called out, his voice piercing through the chaos like a lighthouse in the fog. "Maybe we should hear the boy's side first?" Jack's heart surged. Daniel was taking a stand, squaring his shoulders against the tide of anxiety. The tension in the air shifted, as if the community were holding its breath, watching. Would Daniel's words have enough weight to break through the sea of blind judgment? "Listen, we can't just treat him like another statistic," Daniel continued, stepping closer to Harris. "He is a kid. We need to find out what is going on." Jack joined Daniel, his resolve solidifying. "We can fix this. We can help guide him. If we don't work together, we lose the chance to change things." Harris faltered for a moment, uncertainty flickering across his face. The sirens had quieted, the noise of the crowd settling into an anxious hum. Jack could see the tension shift slightly, the gravity of their plea pressing against the rigid barriers that often governed reactions. And just then, from the back of the crowd, an elderly woman emerged, wrinkled hands shaking but determined. "That boy is my grandson," she shouted, eyes bright with both fear and resolve. Jack felt a jolt. The threads of their fates were intertwining. Here was a chance for them to witness the full story, a tapestry of lives woven together. "Please," the woman spoke with desperation. He didn't steal. He was just trying to find something to eat. He has had a rough time." The crowd quieted again, absorbing her words like sponges. Jack looked around at the faces, some softening, others still hard, but the flicker of conflict was evident. The old wounds were being opened, but maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to heal them. As the woman's voice trembled in the air, Jack felt the weight of possibility shift like a live wire. Could this moment be enough to bring Millville closer to understanding? With hope surging through him, he clung to the idea that sometimes it took just one courageous act to create a ripple effect of change. But could they truly break the chains of prejudice that had held this town captive for so long? Would this moment be the turning point Jack so desperately wished for? Or would the shadows loom larger once again? The murmurs rippled through the crowd, a wave of uncertainty mixing with newfound compassion. Jack felt the tension shifting. The elderly woman's raw truth hung in the air like a bold statement, demanding attention. He could see some hearts beginning to open, slowly warming to the reality that not all stories fit neatly into the lines drawn by society's harshest judgments. "Ma'am," Harris said, his voice a mix of authority and the hesitation of a man faced with a moral crossroads. "Are you certain? This is a serious accusation." He glanced back at the boy, still frightened and pale, his small frame trapped within the weight of the situation. The boy's eyes darted between the shifting emotions of the crowd, desperately seeking hope among strangers. Jack's heart ached for him. This child's life hung in the balance, not just on this moment, but on the collective memory of how they would choose to respond. Yes. The woman raised her chin, her voice steadying. I know my grandson. He wouldn't steal to survive, or otherwise. He has just been trying to help our family get by since his father, well, you see, his father was a soldier. A hero, she added, her voice cracking with emotion. The mention of a soldier caught the attention of many, softening the hardened faces amid the gathering. Jack watched as recognition flickered in Harris's eyes. The officer's father had served too. The connection hit hard, a reminder of sacrifice woven into their lives. He is just a kid trying to do his best in an impossible situation. Daniel stepped in, his voice resonating with a sincerity that echoed off the buildings surrounding them. We all have stories. We need to listen to understand. As the crowd absorbed Daniel's words, Jack took a moment to reflect on their shared humanity. It was a messy tapestry for sure, hope woven in with despair, love mixed with fear. Could they come together to create something beautiful from their struggle? The murmurs began to rise again, people leaning toward each other, whispering, sharing. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others nodded defiantly in agreement. Jack felt a surge of determination, watching the community slowly awaken from its slumber of ignorance. Then, Harris took a step closer to the boy, who flinched at first but slowly uncrossed his arms, a flicker of trust glimmering in his eyes. Here's what we're going to do, Harris announced, his voice commanding yet softened by the unmistakable hint of empathy. I'll lead the investigation not just as a cop, but as a guardian. There will be no charges pressed today. But we need to understand the full story. You'll have to be honest with me, son. Can you do that? The boy nodded slowly, his gaze turning toward his grandmother, who stood proud and resolute, tears glistening in the corners of her eyes. Jack felt the immediate shift in the crowd as energy, hope fluttering like a newly unfurled leaf in spring. It was stirring within him too, a desire to push forward, to see where this new course of action might lead. But just as he thought they might navigate towards some semblance of resolution, an unfamiliar figure appeared at the edge of the crowd, a dark silhouette looming underneath the bright streetlights. The air thickened again, tension rising as whispers slipped through the throng. Who is that? Someone asked, the voice heavy with apprehension. Jack squinted, trying to get a better look as the figure moved closer, a palpable aura of intimidation swirled about them. What trouble had just stepped into their fragile moment of unity? He felt his heart pound in his chest, a cold realization curling within him. Sometimes, before a community could heal, it first had to face its true adversaries. Could they hold on to the hope they had just ignited, or would fear extinguish it before it could truly blossom? The figure emerged from the shadows, revealing a man dressed in plain clothes, yet every step he took was measured, deliberate. It was as though he were the long-lost storm on a sunny day, ready to shake everything they had begun to mend. "Step aside," he commanded, his voice sharp and unwavering, cutting through the murmurs like ice. The crowd shifted uneasily, a ripple of discomfort darting through them. Jack felt a visceral reaction in the pit of his stomach. Who was this man, and what did he want? Harris instinctively moved to block his path, but the man simply smirked, a dance of contempt playing on his lips. "We both know you don't want to make a scene here, officer. Not after all the trouble yesterday. Let me remind you that I have your back and those boys are in my sights." The mention of boys sent a chill through Jack, and he felt his heart drop. It was a reference to the kids hanging around the neighborhood, often tagged as troubled young lives caught in a web of prejudice and fear. "I don't need you here," Harris replied, his voice strained as he fought to hold the crowd at bay. "This is about understanding, not intimidation." But the man chuckled, a low and menacing sound that sent a wave of tension rippling through the crowd. Understanding? Don't be naive. The world doesn't work that way. The weak suffer. It's how it's always been. Jack caught a glimpse of the boy. His eyes widened, and he stepped back as though the man was a live wire. Jack's heart ached for him, each breath becoming deeper, aching for courage. Here's the truth. The man pressed, stepping closer, his tone oozing with disdain. Those stories you're all so fond of? They want to save you. They never do. He waved a hand, dismissing their hopes like mere dust. But then, from the back of the crowd, a voice rose, steady and unwavering. It was Daniel, his words ringing true and loud over the dark men's jeers. You don't get to decide who is worthy of compassion. We're not just stories. We're people. A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd, drawing strength that surprised even Jack. Faces brightened, hands went up, forming a barrier between the man and the boy. Hope pooled in the air, flickering like the light of a candle. But he's right, the elderly woman finally added, her voice soft yet cutting through the rising tension. There's darkness everywhere, but that's why we must stand together. My son didn't fight for this country only to see his family torn apart by fear. Your son? What son? The dark figure sneered. I bet he didn't even make it through training. At her words, the crowd gasped. Jack felt a unity building, a collective force. This was about much more than the boy now. This was about their community, their identities intertwined within the stories of those they had lost and those they fought for every day. Then, with an intensity like thunder, the woman straightened her spine. He was in special ops. I'll take any moment of his pain over the continued existence of hate. And I will honor him, even if you can't. The audience fell silent, caught between shock and respect. Jack could see the shift. The dark figure seemed to shrink under the weight of her declaration. Their lives were worth fighting for, despite the fears that plagued them. But that moment was fracturing. Would it be enough to repel the darkness? The man's face twisted in rage, eyes darting toward the boy, the child as bravely trembling frame now a target. Jack stepped forward, ready to protect. But would his courage hold? And what would the man do next? In that fragile moment, the stakes couldn't be higher. The crowd held its breath, as hope and fear wrestled for supremacy. The air crackled with tension, as an unseen conflict about to unravel loomed overhead. Could they rally together and fend off the growing dread, or would they splinter beneath the weight of the unknown? The answer lay just a breath away. The hush enveloped the crowd, pressing down like a heavy winter blanket. Jack felt the weight of 1,000 eyes, all fixated on the dark figure, who now appeared more like a cornered animal than the menacing force he had once seemed. Tension hung thick in the air, and Jack's heart raced as he could almost hear it thumping in his chest. Suddenly, the man's anger bubbled over. You think your good intentions matter? He pointed a finger at Daniel and the elderly woman, each word dripping with scorn. Compassion won to save you. You're playing with fire. Jack, unsettled by the fury etched on the man's face, sought the boy's gaze. He found a flicker of defiance in the child's eyes, and it ignited a spark in him. The boy's courage seemed contagious, washing over Jack in waves. He squared his shoulders, refusing to let fear take hold. Enough, Harris said, his voice rising above the fray. It had a commanding firmness, born from authority and a deep-rooted need to protect the vulnerable. Leave. Now! The dark figure stepped even closer, invading their space like a shadow stretching over the light. You all think you can stand together? You're a joke. This is the real world. The strong survive, and the weak? Well, they get swept aside. Just then, a voice from the back shouted, Not anymore! A ripple of applause surged through the crowd, piercing the darkness that enveloped them. Voices joined in unison, rallying against the tide of hatred. Jack watched as the elderly woman took a step forward. You think we're weak, but it's the opposite. We've seen pain and loss, and we refuse to sit quietly while you insult our loved ones. The shift in sentiment was palpable. It spread like wildfire through the gathered crowd, fueling a fire that blazed within each person present. The man faltered, his bravado cracking. You're all fools, he spat, but the contempt in his voice trembled. Jack seized the moment, stepping closer to the front line. Perhaps the real fools are those who think they can use fear as their weapon, he shouted, every word brimming with conviction. Together, we stand against you and anyone like you. You don't own this community, we do. The phrase caught a wave of reaction, a thunderous cheer erupting from the crowd. Jack felt adrenaline coursing through him, a courage swelling from deep within. As the man hesitated, the elderly woman continued, her voice steady and unwavering. We carry our griefs with pride. My son fought for a country that claims freedom and justice, and I will not let his sacrifice be in vain. You will not take that away from us. With each word, the dark figure began to shrink back, the life drained from his face. The boy stepped closer to the elderly woman, finding solace in her strength. But just as victory seemed within reach, the man turned, his anger simmering to a dull roar. You think this is over? I only just began. Jack felt a cold chill race down his spine as the man stepped back into the shadows. A shadow that might never be far behind. The crowd exhaled, realizing the battle was not truly won. Their resolve flickered, but it held for now. Tired yet defiant, Jack turned to the boy, catching his eye. Are you okay? He whispered, kneeling to bring himself down to the boy's level. Yes, the boy replied, his voice wavering but steady. As Harris began to disperse the crowd, urging them to return to their homes for safety, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation had left more than just visible scars. Dark clouds still loomed overhead, and there was no telling if another storm was brewing. Jack looked out over the crowd, sorrow and determination etched on their faces. This was just the beginning, and he was more convinced than ever they needed to prepare for what lay ahead. As they slowly dispersed, the question lingered in Jack's mind, what had the man truly meant by, I only just began? The shadows, both within and without, would not remain silent for long. The next few days passed slowly, dripping like rainwater from a leaky roof. Jack felt the weight of anxiety settle heavily on his shoulders. The crowd's victory chant echoed in his mind, but the memory of the dark figure's words haunted him. I only just began. What did that mean? Walking through town felt different. The streets, once filled with laughter and chatter, now echoed with whispers of fear. People glanced at each other, their eyes filled with unspoken questions. Jack noticed the elderly woman, Mrs. Henderson, sitting on her porch. She looked fragile, her usual fire dimmed by the shadows creeping into their lives. He approached her cautiously, concern knotting his stomach. How are you holding up? A flicker of warmth crossed her face, but it was quickly overshadowed by worry. I'm all right, dear. Just thinking about what is next. I can feel the darkness crawling back, just waiting for us to falter. Jack nodded, the truth in her words stinging like frostbite. The challenge they faced wasn't just a single encounter. It was a movement, a fight for their community. We can't lose heart. We fought back once. We can do it again. She sighed, her gaze drifting to the horizon as if searching for hope among the clouds. I just wish my son were here. He always knew how to stand strong. He'd have rallied them better than I could. Jack felt a lump in his throat, the weight of her grief pressing in. He sounds brave. You should be proud of him. I am. It's just sometimes pride feels hollow when you wish you could hear their voice one more time. Before Jack could respond, the familiar figure of Harris approached, anxiety radiating from him. Jack! Mrs. Henderson! We need to talk. What is wrong? Jack asked, stepping forward, his heart pounding in his chest. There has been a disturbance downtown. A few people are gathering. They're calling for action. And they don't have our community's best interests in mind. Fear wrapped around Jack like a vice. What do you mean? How many people? Not sure. But it feels like they're trying to incite something, provoke us. I think that dark figure is behind it. He has not done. The urgency thick in the air, and Jack swallowed hard. We can't let fear take over again. We need to show that we will not back down. Mrs. Henderson stood a little taller. You're right, Jack. We need to be together, to remind them that we are strong, that we are united. As they prepared to head toward town, Jack felt a stirring deep within him. This was more than a struggle, it was a call to arms for everyone who believed in unity, in love, and in justice. Arriving downtown, the scene was tense. A small gathering surged with voices filled with anger and frustration. Jack surged forward, determined to stand up for what was right. Then, amid the chaos, he spotted familiar faces. A group of veterans were stepping forward, uniting against the tide. His heart swelled with hope. They carried the spirit of the community and a message that needed to be shared. Listen! One veteran shouted, his voice clear and commanding, cutting through the din. Everyone turned, and Jack felt the collective breath of the crowd suspend in anticipation. But before the veteran could continue, the dark figure reemerged from the shadows. A grin of malice splashed across his face. You still think you're a community? Watch how quickly that crumbles. A hushed silence fell, the air thick with an impending storm. Jack felt every heartbeat resonating with tension. What happens next? He wondered, a mixture of dread and determination swirling inside him. As the edges of conflict tightened, he knew they would need more than words this time. They were on the brink of something significant, something that would test every ounce of courage they had left. Would they stand together once more, or would the shadow cast over them finally snuff out the light? The stillness hung heavy, a fragile bubble ready to burst. Jack felt adrenaline course through him, quickening his heartbeat. The dark figure's presence was suffocating, but fear was a partner he refused to dance with. He clenched his fists, eyes narrowing on the malice radiating from the man who threatened everything they cared about. Enough! Jack shouted, stepping forward. His voice cut through the doubt, startling many. He didn't feel brave, but he knew silence was worse. We are united? Your threats want to shake us. Eyes turned towards him, faces filled with uncertainty and a flicker of hope. The veteran shifted closer to Jack, shoulder to shoulder, forming a solid line against the unseen darkness. The veteran who had spoken earlier raised his chin, pride shining through his worry. Jack is right. We're not here to fight for survival alone. We're here to thrive together. The dark figure sneered but remained silent for the moment, his eyes scanning the crowd. Jack felt a surge of energy from the people around him. They weren't just watching. They were becoming part of something larger than themselves. Remember what we fought for. Another veteran yelled. This town, our families, our future. They can't take that from us. A murmured agreement rippled through the gathering. The tension in the air crackled like static electricity, and Jack could see it in the eyes of the townsfolk, a flicker of defiance igniting. They were ready, but to push back or retreat, that was the question. What about the police? Someone from the crowd finally voiced, panic creeping into their tone. What if they don't support us? The veteran stood straighter. We are the community. The law is meant to protect us, and if they're not on our side, we remind them that they work for us, not the other way around. Then Jack remembered the words of Mrs. Henderson, that they had to be together. He turned to her, seeking strength in her presence. Mrs. Henderson, would you share your story? You've faced loss, and yet you show resilience. There are many who need that inspiration right now. She blinked, caught off guard, yet the warmth returned to her eyes. My son, he served for years. He fought for freedom and stood against hatred. If he were here, he'd remind us that it's never too late to stand up, that love is so much stronger than fear. Her voice trembled and grew steadier. We have to stand for each other. It's our only hope. The crowd erupted into supportive murmurs, swelling like a tide. Jack felt the collective heartbeat of his community weaving a fabric of courage around them. They were stronger together, facing the shadows with light and hope. The dark figure shifted, looking unsure, but he quickly masked it with arrogance. Go ahead and speak your truths, but you'll find burdens are heavy. He sneered, but Jack already sensed his power waning. Let him speak. Jack continued, spurred on by a new sense of purpose. Let every word he says echo in this town. Anger can't win as long as we choose solidarity. Let us drown his hatred in our unity. The crowd roared in agreement this time, and Jack felt both exhilarated and terrified. They were moving toward a greater confrontation, and there was no turning back now. The dark figure's expression twisted into frustration as he paced the front of the gathering, his anger palpable. The energy shifted, anticipation crackling in the air as Jack prepared to grab hold of this moment of empowerment. Then, from behind the crowd, a new voice pierced through the noise, clear and steady. What is going on here? It was the local sheriff, flanked by several officers. Relief flooded Jack's chest, and with it concern. Would they come to protect or suppress? Are you here to back us up? Someone shouted, the fear creeping back into the atmosphere. Jack's heart raced. This was the pivotal moment. Would the sheriff stand with them against the dark figure, or would he reinforce the chains of fear? As the community held its breath, everything hinged on those next few words. Would they find solidarity in their darkest hour, or face the impending storm alone? The moment hung like a fragile thread, taut and trembling. The sheriff's eyes scanned the crowd, then landed hard on the dark figure before him. For a pregnant pause, desperation thickened the air. Jack felt every heartbeat, every anxious breath echo around him. Would the sheriff's next decision lead them into the light or deeper into shadow? Hey! The sheriff called out, stepping forward. This isn't how we resolve things. The tone was stern, yet there was something else, an undercurrent, that hinted at his willingness to listen. Jack's heart picked up, hope threading through his fear. What are you going to do? The crowd murmured, uncertainty rippling through them. The sheriff had always been seen as a protector, but the town had seen its share of fear-based governance. Would he break that cycle today? The dark figure laughed, a cold, sharp sound. This is just a gathering of naive souls. They don't understand who is really in charge. He grinned menacingly, relishing the tension. The sheriff turned slowly, steadying himself against the looming threat. The people are in charge here, the sheriff said, his voice calm but firm, and I'm here to listen to them. He placed a hand on his holster, not as a threat, but as a gesture of assurance. The officers behind him shifted, echoing their leader's stance, standing tall with their badges instead of backs turned. Let us put this to the test, the sheriff continued, glancing at the crowd. What do you want? Support? Someone yelled. We want our town back from fear. And respect, cried another. We need to believe we're safe here. The sheriff nodded, acknowledging each voice. We can only keep the peace if we all work together. What is happening here isn't just a fight for control. It's about all of us. Every one of you matters to me and to this community. As murmurs shifted into a chorus of agreement, Jack felt his pulse quicken. There was something almost electric in the air now, like a storm poised to break, an energy that no one could ignore. The dark figure, however, seemed unfazed. His sneer was still full of malice, but the bravado slowly tempered. Then the sheriff refocused on the dark figure. And you're here to sow discord, aren't you? But that won't work here. Turning to Jack, he added, your voice matters. Where do we go from here? Jack felt the weight of the moment. We stand together. No one person can tear this community apart if we refuse to let them. His voice surged through the crowd, confidence spilling over like a tide. The dark figure shifted, growing visibly more agitated. You think this is over? I'm just getting started. There was a promise in his threat, but Jack now sensed it was laced with desperation. A flicker of doubt crossed the dark figure's eyes, but before he could retaliate, Mrs. Henderson stepped forward again, determination etched in her expression. We know what you're trying to do. But this town, it's more than just a place, it's our lives, our shared stories. It cannot be broken. As if stirred by her words, the crowd erupted in supportive cheers. Jack was swept away in the swell of solidarity, something tangible, a force stronger than the darkness threatening them. But just as the crowd began to celebrate their small victory, something unexpected happened. A hand shot up from the back of the crowd, trembling and determined. Wait! A voice rang out, familiar yet strained. I have something to say. Everyone turned to see who had spoken, faces shifting from excitement to confusion. Jack felt his heart race again. Who was it? The figure stepped into view, one frail and weathered by years yet resolute. As she pushed forward, her voice rang out sharply against the backdrop of fear. I know what you're facing. Mrs. Henderson's eyes widened in recognition. Jack's heart sank. What was she about to reveal that could change everything once again? What was this secret she carried against the shadows? The crowd grew quiet, anticipation hanging like a weight in the air. Jack felt a knot tighten in his stomach as Mrs. Henderson, her frail frame trembling against an unseen burden, began to speak. I've faced my share of darkness, she began, her voice quivering but strong. Years ago, I lost my son to a war that some deemed unjust. He fought bravely, believing in something greater, only to come home changed and lost. Tears glistened in her eyes, a kaleidoscope of grief and strength. Jack watched, captivated. I could have allowed my hurt to fester, let the anger spill out onto others. But instead, I chose a different path. I chose to share his story, to remind us that we are a community bonded by love, not divided by fear. Her words struck a chord, reverberating through the crowd. Jack saw a shift. People began to nod, to acknowledge the pain that intertwined through their pasts. As she continued, passion ignited. Fear doesn't just destroy, it isolates. When we let it govern us, when we yield to the darkness, we forget our purpose. We forget that compassion is our greatest weapon. The dark figure scoffed, but even he couldn't escape the growing unease on the faces surrounding him. Jack felt empowered, drawing strength from Mrs. Henderson's story. This was the heart of Millville, the resilience that had always thrived within them. Together, she implored, voice gaining momentum, we have to write our future. A future where every voice matters, where we uplift one another instead of tearing each other down. It begins with understanding. Jack felt his heartbeat quicken. Could this be the moment where everything shifted? Where they took back their town, not just from fear, but towards unity and collective healing? Understanding allows us to see the soldiers behind the guilt, the children behind their mistakes. Unless we stand together in love, we could lose it all over again. This time, the crowd didn't just murmur. They began to chant, echoing her fervor, their voices weaving together in a tapestry of conviction. It was an anthem of solidarity, each heartbeat joining in the fight against the encroaching shadows. Feeling the swell of support, Jack turned to the sheriff. They're ready to stand with us. Let us create a forum for dialogue, a way to heal and share stories. We could transform fear into strength. The sheriff's eyes sparkled with alignment, a glimmer of recognition dancing across his eyes. You're right. But we need to establish trust. It's time to show this town that we stand aside with love. As tension thinned, the dark figure faltered, rage tumbling over his bravado. You think your voices matter? You think this is over? I will not accept this defeat. He stepped forward, but the bubble of community strength pulsated, refusing to break. Your fear has no power here, Jack shouted, stepping forward to stand beside Mrs. Henderson and Daniel. Together we are unbreakable. Together we transform pain into purpose. With that declaration, the crowd erupted, a force fueled by shared experience and hope coursing through them. The weight of the dark figure's threat shrank to almost nothing as they found power in their collective story. The sheriff stepped visibly protectively between them, arms spread wide. You can leave now, before this gets worse for you. The dark figure hesitated, the prism of support around him squeezing his confidence. Then, with one last scowl, he retreated into the shadows, murmuring threats that faded into the distance. As the crowd held its breath for a moment, the realization dawned their courage had chased darkness away. Cheering erupted, echoing down Main Street. Jack felt tears sting his eyes, the weight of relief flooding through him. He turned to Mrs. Henderson, who was now enveloped by others, the love and respect they exuded healing open wounds of centuries. "Thank you," he whispered to her. She merely smiled, a radiant warmth glowing in her eyes. "It's not over. This is just the beginning." He nodded, a smile breaking across his face. This was the spark they had ignited, a chance for change, hope tethered together with empathy. As laughter floated amidst the collective release, Jack felt a new dawn illuminating Millville. "This is the moment we take back our town," he vowed, glancing around at the heart swelling with renewed purpose. "Let us be the voice of love and understanding together." The future opened like a door, inviting them forward, teaching them to continue believing in the power of community. Jack knew they could transform the legacy of fear into a foundation of support. As the sun sank low, casting golden rays across the street, Jack took a deep breath, feeling the rush of promise fill the night. They had broken the cycle. Now, as they stepped into this new chapter, could they sustain it? Only through love, understanding, and a collective heart wound. Let them forget. So, are you ready to become part of this story? You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive tales. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and spread the word about our journey. Comment below how this ending made you feel, and what transformation you find most inspiring. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful message of change. Don't wait not even one more second to share that love. Only true fans will know the importance of supporting our channel through these actions.